might even mingle amongst you. I have a habit of doing that. Well, I'm Daniel Scott. I have spent the last 15 years working in emergency management. I've worked in a very large array of areas. I've worked in higher education, currently still work in higher education, but I've transferred from higher education to city county office, back to a private university. Now I'm working for a state college district in Monterey County. I actually began my career in first response, so I was educational law enforcement. And in educational law enforcement, if you don't know, we are certified in law enforcement, fire, EMS, so we respond to everything. So we ultimately, if there was a medical, if there was criminal activity, if there was a fire, we were dog catchers. So we did everything on a college campus, especially when you got students who live there. So we have large experience, large background. I work with every organization, and that is why I fell in love with emergency management. When I transitioned into emergency management, it was based on an established need that was found. I didn't just one day wake up and say, I want to be an emergency manager. As in the transition of my career, I became a safety compliance officer. I worked more on the fire compliance, fire safety, fire regulatory side of things, and learning and building my knowledge, because I had none in emergency management. I started realizing we don't have any emergency preparedness plans, we don't have any emergency preparedness trainings, we don't have any emergency preparedness anything. And I started learning and seeking knowledge. I spent a lot of my time when I did training down at Center for Domestic Preparedness. Anybody know where that is? Center for Domestic Preparedness down in Alabama. Amazing training facility. If you haven't been, you should go. It's grant funded, so you don't have to pay anything, which is awesome for an emergency manager, because most emergency managers don't have budgets. So I ultimately started working and having to do deep research into where can I get this training, get this knowledge, get this learning, very low to no cost. Well, that led me to my passion for, and I have a passion for leadership. And it rivals my passion for emergency management. Who here is actually passionate about emergency management and actually loves what you do? We've got a good amount, ish, right? So there's a difference between loving what you do and loving where you do it. Now, we've all been there, right? We might not necessarily enjoy where we work, but we love what we do. I love emergency management. There's not very many people that can say they love what they do. They love their job. Well, I love emergency management. I love leadership, because emergency management, if you're an emergency manager, you work at some type or some level of leadership, whether it's intentional or not. So I'm not here to teach you about leadership today. That's not what this presentation is. This is more of a challenge. This is more of, has anybody ever been goosed? That's what I'm doing to you today. I'm goosing you. I'm challenging you to step up into leadership, wherever you may be. And as I go through, and there's another little side note. I go off, I chase rabbits and squirrels. I do that, and I don't stop myself from doing that. So my presentation today you may understand it, you may not, you may see on this slide or not, because I do chase an idea that pops in my head. A lot of that is to do with a thought that I'm having, or something I feel like you might need to know or want to know. Whether you want to or not, I'm going to tell you. But we're gonna go through this presentation. I've tried to make it semi-entertaining, so you're just not death by PowerPoint. That's not how I do things, but it's just to give you something, and it prompts me as well. So I'm going to ask you just a few questions here. Who here considers themselves? No hands. Really? Oh, we got one over there. All right. Who considers themselves a mentor? Everybody who just raised their hand should be raising your hand for being a leader. Who here is a learner? Leaders are the best learners. Everybody in this room is a leader at some level. Not everybody in this room probably wants to be a leader. Not everybody in this room should be a leader. But at some level, you have a level of leadership that you contribute to every day. So what is leadership? John Quincy Adams said, if your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, you are a leader. Emergency managers, that's what we do. We give people, we support them, we coordinate, we give them resources. We teach them to become more than what they already have. So this is your brain. This is your brain on emergency management. And this is pretty accurate at all stages, right? Before, during, and post response or EOC operation. This is what it feels like in our offices, especially when in the majority of the country, of the world, in emergency management, the emergency manager's a department of one. And most of the time, it's other duties as assigned. So they're doing it partial, if at all, or they have it in name only. There are organizations out there that it falls on the highest leader of the city or the county or the organization, and they say they fill the role, but they really do not. Leadership, more than anything, is proactive. And what I feel, if you work in any type of response organization, which I have, and most of you in here I can see do as well, we're very reactive. We train to respond to a situation. Emergency management is not a response-driven profession. Emergency managers should be proactive. They should be very active in their communities, should be very active in their organizations. And this is me going off on a tangent. This is an argument that I have all the time, is that emergency management is not a first response organization, first response profession. It's a secondary, tertiary response. We have those duties that when we do respond, we're not going lights and sirens to a scene. And I say that knowing that I worked in a profession. When I worked in Waco, Texas, I worked in a city-county office. I literally had two bosses, the city manager and the county judge, and I had a lights and sirens vehicle. And I went lights and sirens to scenes because that's what they wanted us to do. So some places it does happen. But for the majority, emergency management is not a first response profession, it's secondary, tertiary. A lot of what we do happens before the emergencies take place or after the emergencies take place. An emergency manager doesn't work just during an incident. They work before, during, and after an incident. Especially when recovery can take years and years and years. And our leadership, our coordination, our support, our knowledge is needed throughout that entire time. But a lot of where we are right now, and it's because of where we come from, civil defense, we're still in the first responder mindset. So we really only kick it up and do stuff when something happens. Instead of literally living day to day, blue sky to blue sky to blue sky to gray sky, driving what it is that we do as an individual, but making our profession better. I feel, and I'm going to get to it here in a minute. The whole point about this that really prompted me to start venturing down this road and goosing the professional, is I feel we're comfortable. And I feel we've been comfortable for a long time. So this is leadership. This is your brain on leadership. It's more organized, but we still have all these things that we have to work on. All these things that we're dealing with every day. But but you notice how much more organized that is? We're more balanced. When we purposely, intentionally do these things and focus our minds on what we're supposed to be doing, we start to go in and we start to develop a flow. We become more balanced. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm very passionate about what I do. Passion doesn't come from your brain, it comes from your heart. And that's what I want all emergency managers, if you're in this profession, to be passionate about what we do. Because what we do means people's lives, their livelihoods, and where they potentially lose their home or not. And I don't feel, as a profession, we are going in the right direction. The professionals, we are seeing something different. So where do we start? It doesn't matter where you are right now in leadership journey. No matter, I mean, if you walked in today and you said you didn't raise your hand when I asked, are you a leader? Well, you raised your hand and said you're a leader, or you've been doing this for a day, or you've been doing this for 10 years. Getting better at something is practicing it. Anything, doesn't matter what it is. And I don't feel like we're practicing emergency management enough. We know emergency management, right? Everybody goes to work knowing what they do. Everybody goes to work, hopefully, knowing how they do their job, knowing how to do their job. But we need to practice every day. And Tony Robbins, anybody know who Tony Robbins is? He's one of my favorite speakers. He says, what you practice in private, you're rewarded for in public. And that stuck with me because a lot of what emergency managers do, they do in privacy of their own office. And one of the I guess, points of my talk today is to instill the desire and the practice to not be in your office every day. A lot of what I feel emergency managers, and this is the perception, and I've had it out with Min Pitbull on this. I actually had it out. Todd DeVoe, if you don't know who Todd DeVoe is, he's in the room. He's the Region 9, IAM Region 9 president right now. He was a host of the M Weekly. So guests come on the show, and I've been on this show. And I've actually argued this point with them, is that if you're in the perception of that, oh, they're just in their office writing plans. Is that really what we're doing? Do people know what those plans? That's one of the reasons why no one knows what the plans are. Know what they say, how they respond to them, because they're in their office, they're writing the plans, and it sits on the shelf. An emergency manager engages with their community. Leadership and learning are indispensable to each other. These are all people smarter than me saying this stuff from history. Now, I'm very passionate about learning as well. If you don't know, if you haven't heard me talk before. My goal is to help build the next generation, which is, as we know, is bridging generations for this conference. As others go out, new people are coming in, whether they are students coming right out of school, or they are individuals coming from another profession, which is very common in emergency management. One of the issues that I have, this is individual, this is me giving you my opinion, is that we're not here when it comes to people coming in learning. They think they know what emergency management is. They think they have an idea of what it is when they come from one profession to another. Whether it's right or not, there's nobody prompting them to do better. And we see this a lot, and this is a theme throughout our country. And I say our country because that's what I'm most familiar with. I'm sure it's happening outside our country as well. That someone comes out of fire or PD or military, and they apply for an emergency management job because they're fully qualified. Really? Are you fully qualified? If you want to make positive impact on the world or in your own little jurisdiction, learning how to be better will make you a better leader and will help you do it better. Learning how to be better. It's intentional, it's purposeful. I'm more of an academic than I like to let on. I guess the new term for it is pracademic. You're a practitioner, you're academic, you're pracademic. Whether or not that's accurate or not, that's what people are calling this. So I do a lot of research, but you don't have to be academic to do a lot of research. You don't have to do a lot. You don't have to be in college to read a book. You don't have to be in college to write a paper. You don't have to be in college to do research on doing your job better. And I don't feel we are learning how to be better leaders because we're comfortable, as I said earlier. True growth happens when you're uncomfortable. No matter, in anything that we do, anything that we watch, doesn't matter if it's as an individual, if it's the environment, whatever it is, it happens. Change happens when it gets uncomfortable, when change takes place. But even more so, and this is where I leave on this is, think of a diamond or a tree, right? It happens when not only they're uncomfortable, pressure is applied. Pressure gets applied to us on a daily basis as emergency manager, or at least it should. If from no one else other than yourself, to do your job better. But it's letting people know why it's important. I have a saying, I should maybe make a t-shirt. Todd's always telling me to make garb. Advocate and educate. We need to be advocating why emergency management is what it is, why it's important, why we do what we do, how others can support us in what we do. And how do we do that? By educating them. And I say them in the broad term. It could be our bosses, it could be our communities, on what it is that we do and how they can better contribute to the process. Now FEMA, and I feel this is another issue, is FEMA as a leader. People look to FEMA for leadership. Well, that's not what they're there for. They're their own organization. And they cannot advertise, or they don't advertise very much, because they can't. It's a government organization. They can't go out and make a bunch of commercials. You're seeing more of those by like PG&E, private organizations. The preparedness stuff out there, emergency management stuff out there. But that needs to come from us as the individual, to advertise our worth, the value that we bring to wherever we bring it to, whether it's an individual organization or if it's a community. There's people in here that work for an organization. There's people in here who work for an entire community or jurisdiction, or a state, or the country. We have to show our worth. But everything rises and falls in leadership. It's either going to fall on yours or someone else's. And the problem I have with that is most of the individuals we look to for leadership aren't true leaders. They're in positions of authority, but they're not leaders. So unless you educate them properly as the leader in emergency management, they're making decisions based on their perception of what they should be making decisions on. And this can be before, during, or after an emergency. Leadership basically falls into two categories of what it is. And the Major General's talked this morning. He nailed that. His description of leadership. If you look for leadership, you'll find 100 different definitions. His definition of leadership this morning was amazing. But leadership is influence, and it's strength to provide that influence. You're not out there saying, hey, look at me, look at me, look at me. That's not what leaders do. A true leader is not out there saying, hey, look what I'm doing, look what I'm doing, look how good I am, right? But you do it at such a level that you're influencing who you're doing it to without being prideful, right? There's a lot of people who are, hey, look at me, about to vote. But ultimately, how we interpret influence and strength in what it is that we do will result in how things either get done or don't get done. Who's making decisions, especially in moments of crisis. And you heard him say, another individual that spoke this morning said, you shouldn't be meeting anybody for the first time on the scene of crisis in the EOC, exchanging business cards. Because that takes place prior. That takes place with engagement and with purpose and intention. Intention being the key word there. You have to intentionally decide, I'm going to go meet somebody, or I'm going to make a phone call, or I'm going to set up a meeting, a Zoom meeting nowadays, right? You don't have to leave your office anymore. So what excuse do you have for not meeting with somebody? You don't have to leave your office. You set up a Zoom meeting, Google Meets, Microsoft Teams, whatever you use. Set up these meetings and have virtual discussions, virtual resource exchange. EOCs are operating virtually as well. The leaders watch and listen. You should know what's going on in your organization, in your jurisdiction, in your region. And I'm getting myself, I'm practicing what I preach here, but there was a time where I didn't care what was going on in my region. I concentrated on what was happening right in front of me. And then you miss everything else that could potentially benefit not only you, but the people that you partner with. Emergency management, one of the reasons why I love it so much, is one of the best networking professions ever. We collaborate like no one's business. We are constantly helping each other. You don't see that in a lot of professions. Even in fire or PD or military, helping each other. But emergency management, we help everybody. We'll work with anybody. We want to. That's one of the issues I had when I was working in response, is I was able to work with everybody because I did everything. I was able to talk to law enforcement with a fellow law enforcement officer because I knew the language. I was able to talk with a fellow fire officer because I knew the language. I was able to talk with EMS because I knew the language. Well, emergency managers know the language of everybody, right? It's being multilingual. And we network and we collaborate and we exchange resources. But that happens through leadership. Leaders step up when others will not step up. They step up and say, I'll do it. If no one else is doing it, okay, I'll do it. Leaders take on the tough and thankless task. Emergency management is one of the most thankless jobs. And you see everything going on in the country right now with law enforcement, which is also a thankless job. Fire, also a thankless job, but people love firemen. Military, thankless profession. But EM as well, because ultimately, and this is another thing. I'm gonna go off on a tangent, guys. I feel like we are, if you did a job search or did a Google search for I don't know if it's A or N, emergency management professional job, emergency manager, emergency management specialist, crisis management specialist, you're not going to find any unison. There's nothing universal out there. You got things that say disaster preparedness, environmental health and safety, fire compliance and code. They're mixing full-time jobs together because nobody's stepping up and telling them this is how it should be. Has anybody here put a proposal in? Show of hands, please. Proposal in for what it is to be an emergency manager? What a job description looks like? Getting an extra position? This is something I'm working on currently because I don't feel that there should be a national qualification list, what it takes to be an emergency manager, emergency management specialist, whatever the dozens of names that people are calling themselves now in emergency management. There should be descriptions, and it should be somewhat universal, especially when it comes to the qualifications to do the job. The leaders go first. And one of the issues I have as a leader, or had, I should say, and I still do at some point, people tell me all the time I need to step up more. Because I was one that, I'm an introvert. I don't go looking to talk to people. I don't go, if I'm usually kind of just off to the side, I'm not intentionally, unless I make myself, with intention, go up and introduce me. I'm Dan, how you doing? So I have to do that more and more and more, and I've had to do that, and I've developed that skill as an emergency manager, because if I didn't, I'd still be sitting in an office writing up a plan, updating the plan, never doing anything really to enforce the plan, train to the plan, and let people know what's in the plan. But it also comes into play with the collaboration, the coordination with others, because I also would have never got involved with my city when I first started doing this job. I volunteered. I was a full-time emergency manager, working as educational law enforcement. But I went to the city and I partnered with them and actually volunteered with their office for 3 years to know what they were doing in their office so they could know what's going on my campus so that we could work together. And I would have never done that if I wasn't practicing leadership. And I was practicing leadership, and the first person, and I actually have a book I want to share with you. It's in one of these slides. Watch the time so I don't ramble on too long. There's a book. John C. Everett, you know who John C. Maxwell is? No? Yeah, a couple people shaking their hand. He's got over 100 books. I just found this out. He's written like over 100 books. He's the leadership guy. But I started reading him at a young age. He was the first book I read was by him. But the book I'm going to share with you is a book you all need to go out and get if you've never read it or borrow it. But I'll share it with you later on. But it's called 360-Degree Leadership. Because most emergency managers, where are they located? In the middle. They're not in the position of decision making. They're usually 3, 4, 5, 6 times removed from leadership. which makes it hard to do the job unless you're willing to step up and go do the job. So I asked these questions already, but I didn't ask how or where. Now I mentioned where. Not everybody raised their hand about why you're passionate about what you do. Most did, which is great. Are you passionate about how you're doing your job? Now everybody's doing it different, but can you literally be and you don't have to answer this out loud. I won't call you out. I want to gut check you a little bit. Goose you, like I said earlier. Are you passionate about how you're doing it? And another question that you really need to ask yourself, are you passionate about where you're doing? Nothing says you got to stay where you're at. If you don't like your job, go find another job. Doesn't have to be emergency manager. Let it be emergency manager. You don't have to do what you're doing if you don't like it. That's your risk. You choose to stay there, right? I was here, but that's also a reason why I've had 3 different jobs in the last 6 years. Because if I don't like where I'm working, I'm going to leave. Go find someplace else. Because I love what I do. But if I'm not going to be supported in how I do it, or where I do it, I'm going to change it. So that's a gut check. You answer that question however you want. Inside, I'm not going to make you say it out loud. You say it out loud. That's good. But these are questions you have to ask yourself. Because I was stuck for a long time in a position I shouldn't have been in a place I shouldn't have been there. Because I didn't want to change. I was too comfortable. I was way too comfortable. So leadership and mentorship, they go together. But this is one of the issues that I'm finding we're lacking in emergency management. Not just the leadership aspect, because everybody's a leader at some level. But we're lacking mentorship at a huge level, especially for those coming into the profession new. You have the mindset, and if this is you, then I am talking to you. That I've been doing this for 20 years. Because you have a degree on it, you can be an emergency manager. So what? I mean, if they're coming out with a degree, have an emergency management degree, does that make them less worthy to do the job? Does that make you less worthy because you've been doing it for 20 years? No. There's no and or here. There are emergency managers who have done the job for 20 years. One of my mentors, no degree, 20 years plus on the job as emergency manager. One of the best emergency managers I know. He's my boss in Waco. No degree. And he had the mentor mindset though. And I learned so much from him on emergency management. We have people coming out of college now. More and more people are going to college to become emergency managers. And we have people coming out of college without anybody to look to for help. And I say it just like this. As a law enforcement officer, as a fire service officer, EMS, when you go to school, and then you're done with school, and you prove you can do the job, and you go get the job and you apply, and what do they tell you on the first day of the job? Forget everything you learned in school, let me show you how it's done. And that's the way it needs to be with emergency management. Great, I'm glad you learned emergency management in school. You got your degree. Forget everything right now, and let me show you how it's done. There's nobody stepping up to these roles. And the people who are in a position to step up to these roles are either old school mindset saying, I don't need education. You don't have to have an education to do this job. Or they're professors saying, I don't need emergency managers telling me how to teach it. Or they're students saying, coming out of school thinking, I can do that job. No, you can't. They have to be taught the job. We need mentorship. And I asked some questions earlier. So here, are you a student? Everybody in this room should be a student for the rest of your life. You should be a lifelong learner. Emergency management, if anything else, teaches us that. You should never stop learning. Things change all the time. You should always be learning, always seeking knowledge. But are you a student? Are you a teacher? Some people teach, some people mentor. Some people teach you, some people mentor you so that you just watch them do what they do. But I'm telling you what about a mentor. And I've done this, so I can't say nobody. But you're not going to find somebody very easily that walks up and says, I'd like to mentor you. But I have done this even more. Walked up to somebody, you mind being a mentor to me? You mind if I take you to lunch and you talk to me about these? And I've actually said those words. Do you mind being one of my mentors? I've been accused multiple times of collecting mentors. You should be accused of collecting mentors. A mentor is not going to walk up to you and say, I would really like to invest in you. They're just not going to do it. It's very seldom that happens. I've done it, so I can't say nobody. But it's usually because you see something in somebody, you teach it, like myself, and you're like, that person needs some guidance. So are you a mentee? Everybody in here should have multiple mentors. Not just one, multiple mentors. Not just from one organization, multiple organizations. Not from one profession, multiple professions. And even if that's a book, that individual could be a mentor. Are you learning from that person? Does that person contribute to your life? Are you seeking out that knowledge? And are you a leader? So let me ask that question again. We've gone through this. I've been talking at you for about 30 minutes. Are you a leader? Raise your hand. More than the first time. So at least something got through. Some people contribute, right? That means something. There's a difference between being a boss and being a leader. There's a difference between being an authority and being a leader. Now, the majority of emergency managers work for people who are in positions of authority. City managers, mayors, organizational presidents or vice presidents, who have no clue what emergency management is, but they will tell you how to do it. So you have to be a person of influence. Simon Sinek, anybody know what Simon Sinek is? Just a couple people. Simon Sinek says, and this kind of goes back to my definition of what a leader is as well, is that there are people at the highest levels who nobody would follow. But there are people in the middle of the organization everybody would follow. They look after the people to the left of them and to the right of them. And they look after people, not the bottom line. Now, even in a jurisdiction, a government office, it's still a bottom line. Where's the money going? Where's it going? Can we cut back on anything? Where do they usually cut back? Public safety. Leadership is important for emergency management. Why? Well, I've been saying why for 30 minutes. Let me say some more. EM positions are in the middle management realm. Now, and I said this before, and this is why the leadership mindset of having intention and having willingness to act is important. Because in the middle of organization, if you are 4, 5, 6 times removed from those who actually can make a decision, how do you get yourself in front of those people? Especially in chain of command. Because you can lose your job if I go around chain of command. Correct? I've seen officers in the room, especially in the military. So how do you influence your upline to put you in front of the right people and at the right tables, in the right meetings? Do you have an actual answer?
You have a vision.
Have a vision.
You have a vision, you're able to express it and communicate it up and communicate it down to everybody in your organization, but especially up so that they understand where you're going. Otherwise, they will tell you where you're going, which may not be where you want to go.
Exactly. Vision and clarity. There's a difference between having a vision and being clear on that vision. Some people have a pretty decent vision, but they don't know how to explain it to anybody. They don't know how to describe that vision to anybody. There's no clarity there. Now, this is an area of my life that I'm actually working on currently. I'm just going to get a little personal with you, tell you about. So I've been an emergency manager for 15 years. I've been the guy doing the job. Over the last couple years, I'm leaning towards not being that guy anymore. Not being the guy in the job, in the office doing the job. My goal is to now support the guy in the job doing the job. or gal, guy or gal, person. So my role is shifting in my life about how I will influence this profession and the professional. Because being in the job is taken away from what I really want to do. The clarity of my life, which is change this profession, change this professional, and support them in what they need. There's a lot of clarity that's missing from our profession. There's a lot of clarity that's missing from our job titles or descriptions on what we do every day. So I'm transitioning to a point to where I will not be doing the everyday boots on the ground, in the office, in the meetings, writing the plan. I'm going to support those that are in the job, boots on the ground, writing the plan. So that's on a personal level, that's where I'm going with my career. And one of the reasons why I'm concentrating on this so much is how do I do that? And there's a whole old adage, and I use this every day. Give people what they want, or sell people what they want, give them what they need. Because a lot of what they need, they don't think they want. They don't think they need it. But you know that they need it. So you package it in a way that's giving them what they want, but you're providing the need that they have. And this, if you're not doing this, write that down. Because you can do this with your upline. Sell them what they think they want. Give them what they need. And that's invaluable. That book I told you about, 360 Degree Leader. That's what it looks like if you're looking online. John C. Maxwell's the author. This is a great book. He's got, like I said, he's written over 100 of them. I've not read one bad book of his. He's a great author. He's a Christian man. He was a pastor before he became the leadership guy. But he studied leadership for over 50 years. And he's written about it in his books. But this book right here should be on every emergency manager's bookshelf. And it should be shelf help, it should be self help. I mean, if you get this book, you better freaking read it. How many of us have books on our shelf and we've never read them? That's shelf help. All right? Read the book. Leadership is influence. It comes from trust. I can't stand for you guys have met me, you guys know me now for going on 45 minutes. I guess in the 45 minutes you can have some level of trust, but if I just walk in and say, hey, trust me, I know what I'm doing. Come on, I got to prove it to you with time and consistency. Continually doing what I'm telling you I'm doing. I got to earn that trust. Leadership and influence is earned. I cannot come in here and tell you, follow me, because I know what I'm doing. You will follow me because I will earn your trust, and I will do that over time and with consistency. You follow the people you follow because you trust them. You have people in your life right now that you have in your life because you trust them. That's what leadership is. It's influence. Influence comes from trust. A good objective of leadership is to help those who are doing poorly to do well, and to help those who are doing well to do even better. Jim Rohn said that. If you don't know who that is, he was a big leader expert and investment expert. But I chose this quote because it goes where I'm going right now with my career. Helping those who are doing poorly to do good, and then helping those who are doing good to do better. There are some in our jobs that are not very good at what they do yet. Help them get better. Help them get good. And by helping them get good, you will get great. And then when you get great, you become outstanding. What does it mean to be outstanding? Believe you can, you're halfway there. The desire to lead goes back to what I mentioned earlier. And this goes back to parenting as well. Simon Sinek, I'll bring it back to him, he's a great author as well. Goes back to parenting as well. So everybody can be a parent or a leader. Not everybody wants to be a parent or a leader. Then this one is very important. Not everyone should be a parent or a leader. But everybody can be a leader. Not everybody wants it. But if you do want it, you do it with intention and with purpose. You earn the trust of those that you're aiming to lead. A leader walking by himself is just taking a walk. I already said that. I kind of mentioned that Mrs. Skoja was going to be off a little bit, but just repeats everything I just said. So why is it important to rise as leaders, especially now? The last 2 years, if they're any indicator, if you're not seeing the writing on the wall, you're blind. Disasters are getting, not only coming more frequently, they're becoming greater intensity. They're causing more damage, more death, more destruction. If there's ever a time for emergency managers to rise to a level that they've never been before, it's right now. Because it's only going to get worse. It's only going to happen more. And I've chose this right here because of these words right here. Coaching and development. That's what leaders do. They coach. We need to coach our uplines on how to be better. Especially on what it is that we do. But we need to coach them how they can support us to be better at what we do. They don't know unless we tell them. They think they know, as I said earlier. They think they know, and they'll tell you how to do your job. They don't know how to do your job. You have to let them know. You have to be vocal. You have to be upfront. You have to step up to the occasion. I loved the comment earlier, you don't rise to level expectations, you fall to your basic level of training. And I 100% believe that. That's where we are here. When you put somebody into a job, they're not going to rise to the expectation because the expectations are unrealistic. And I should have put it in here. I have a great meme. On one side of the aisle it's saying, we did all that planning, we spent all that money, and nothing ever happened. You're terrible at your job. And on the bottom it says, all this happened, and it still affected us horribly. You're fired. As an emergency manager, we are always looking. And when I was in Waco, Texas, this was the same. This is sad. You basically are employed disaster to disaster. One disaster away from losing your job. Because it's so political. You didn't do everything you needed to do. I looked bad. You lost your job, I replaced you with somebody else. Versus if we were rising to the occasion, which was not going to happen, right? That's the expectation. We're going to rise to the occasion. Put yourself in a position where everybody has the same expectation on themselves. As I said earlier, we want to go from good to great, great to outstanding. Well, to be outstanding, you have to stand out. You have to put yourself out there. The pessimist complains about the wind. The optimist expects it to change. The leader adjusts the sails. That's John Maxwell. The leader doesn't try and change what's happening. You can't. You adjust to be able to cope with it. A new president comes in. The last 2 years, this is another thing for me. Last 2 years in my job, I've gone through 3 presidents and 4 vice presidents. My direct upline. How am I supposed to make change in that? Right? But I have to adjust to the environment, not to the situation. How do I do that? I don't try and change the president or vice president. I try to change the cabinet and the board. I put myself out there. I talk to the board. I talk to the cabinet. I don't talk to one person. But how did I get to the board and invited to in the cabinet and invited to the board? I asked. Most people don't even ask. Take the simple question and ask it. You mind if I talk to the cabinet, address the cabinet, train the cabinet? I asked, I want to be a part of the weekly cabinet meeting for the first hour so that I could train. ICS, situational awareness, what it is that I do, what do I expect, what my budget is, how they can help me increase it, what kind of help I have, if I have any, what the expectations are of them, what's realistic, what's not. The next generation of emergency managers are in need of someone to step up and say, let me show you how to do it. We need to turn decades into days. We have the decades. We've been doing this for, collectively in this room, we've probably got 100 years of experience that we can condense into days of training, mentorship, and guidance to those coming into the job. To let them do the job better. They're going to be doing the job far after we're gone. And you want them to train the next generation after them. And it's only going to get better the better we do it. If I train her to be good, she'll train them to be great. This profession, really, it's still in its infancy. But that's a tired excuse. We've been saying that for 20 years. How long are you an infant for? Change comes when you're uncomfortable. You get uncomfortable when you try new things. It's time to push us outside the comfort zone. It's better to learn from other people's failures and mistakes than our own. Wouldn't you rather learn from someone else before it happened to you? That's where mentorship comes in. If we give them our knowledge, our lessons, and our experience, the next generation will be great at what we do. At what we do. They'll be great at what we do. Growth, change, and comfort zone. What I've been saying the whole time, but here it is. The last 2 years, if you're comfortable after the last 2 years, something's wrong with you. We have been pushed and drugged outside of our comfort zone, and we are like crawling to get back into it. This is the time for emergency managers to step up and say, this is why it's important that I exist. This is why it's important that my department's here. This is why I need more funding. This is why I need more people. This is why I need more training. Emergency managers need to step up right now. Because the last 2 years, and as we see, we're getting more comfortable. We're getting back in the comfort zone again. And I bring this all the way back to 9/11 because that's where for my age, that's where the 9/11 incident, that's what really got me thinking about what I do. I was 18 during 9/11, working as a waiter. We have short-term memories in this country. We want to forget because we don't want to think about the bad things, right? We have very short-term memories. And if we continue to let history repeat itself, more and more people are going to die. People's lives depend on what we do every day. And they'll never see it if we do it right. That's why mitigation is so hard. All the money you put into it, all the training you do, all the planning that goes into it, nobody ever sees that work. But response, lights and sirens, oh, that's sexy. Right? You see it on the news. It leads, if it bleeds, it leads, right? That hasn't changed since they found out it worked back in the 60s. Death and destruction gets people's attention. People want to see it. That's why it's so hard for us to justify them giving us more money, more people, more training. Because they don't see it when we do our job right. But I'd rather them not see it than see it. But we can justify it now. Just reflect on the last 2 years. You don't have to go past further than that. With COVID, with the hurricanes, with the volcano, fires, you don't even have to go past 2 years to justify why you exist. We're allowing the EM profession to be comfortable. There's still so much for us to do. There's so much for us to do. There's still so much growing to do. And growing has pain. Growing has pain. And there's still so much to become. But we can change the next generation if we step up to the plate right now. Especially the people in this room. Because you came to this room with at least a little inkling of what leadership talking. What can I do to be better? Now, I got 5 minutes left. Apparently, that's longer than I planned on. You guys got me heated. So I'll speed up just a little bit, but also I wanted to give time for questions. But change happens, pressure when pressure is applied, which is really important because we need to apply pressure to ourselves. We're going to get pressure from the outside. That's just the way it's going to be. We're going to get pressure, but not necessarily the right type of pressure. But when you're more worried about losing your job than building upon yourself and the profession, if you do what's needed to be done to build upon yourself and this profession, you will not lose your job. Because you're going to prove your worth. And that's something that emergency managers don't do enough of. We don't prove the value that we bring to the table, the worth that we bring to the table. And the way we do that is we talk about it. Now, I've been studying over the last 2 years, and I don't know why it happened over the last 2 years. It was after COVID hit. But I've been studying marketing like a madman over the last 2 years. We need to be marketers. We need to market ourselves. We need to sell ourselves every day to our leadership, to our jurisdiction, to the people that can help us do our job better. We need to sell ourselves every day. You need to learn how to market yourself in your job. And that comes through influence and leadership. We bring tremendous value. There's nobody in this room who wouldn't believe that. Well, there are people above us who will. We have to show them that we bring so much value that they don't even consider making a change. If anything, I've heard some good things this week about people getting more money. They want to give us more money so we do a better job. They want to give us more people so we can do more of what we're doing. We do that by showing them how much value we bring to the table, how much worth we bring to the organization, to the jurisdiction that we're in. We have to make an effort. We have to engage. Adding value to others is different than valuing others. Everybody stay with me on that? Just because I value somebody, don't mean I added value to them. We value our organization, we value where we work, we value our jurisdiction. Add value to that. Be proud of being an emergency manager. I love being an emergency manager. I love emergency management, and even though I'm thinking of switching out of being an emergency manager, I will still be an emergency management professional because I love this field and my goal is to help you. I love being an emergency manager. You should love doing what you do. And if you don't love what you do, either do it different or do something else. We have a moral obligation to do our jobs well. People's lives depend on what we do. We have a moral obligation to make what it is that we do known, and we have a moral obligation to do our jobs well. People's lives depend on this. Organizations, their homes, property, environment, depend on what we do and do not do. Let's change today. Let's step up. Let's lead the industry, the future of emergency management. Go be Austin. Suit up. This is one of my favorite sayings, and I won't go into it because I'm running out of time. But I'm tired of the tactical casual. I'm tired of it. We need to switch it up. We need to be more. We need to switch the way we look at things. We're not going lights and sirens to a scene. We don't need to be dressing like police officers. We don't need to be dressing like firemen. We don't need to be dressing like military if we're not doing that job. If we're not going lights and sirens, let's change the way people see us. Step up. Thank you.